Well, I'm back. I wonder what I've missed. It's probably not important. Hello and welcome to another episode of Cartoon Breakdown. I'm your host, the Animator. Well, I'm back, and while I was away, I was working on ways to make the show better. I know it doesn't look like it now, but I've been working on title cards as well as trying to figure out just how I can separate the show into segments so that way I can have a more streamlined episode rather than from the hip shooting of the episodes I was doing. This also means I won't be forgetting any of the segments anymore, and you will be getting a more fuller episode rather than some of the half episodes I've done in the past. Another thing of note is I got a new microphone so that way I can have a better recording than what I had before. Because any good YouTuber knows that having a good microphone is key to maintaining a good audience. With that, let's get started on the episode. As I've stated in previous episodes, the 90s were a time where dark and gritty and grunge became sort of a new norm. I did, however, forget one particular aspect that cartoon shows were doing back in the 90s, and that was becoming more edgy and, most importantly, extreme! Such as the show that I'm talking about today, Swat Kats. These shows were violent and fun to watch for a whole generation. That is, until Ted Turner decided to stop these types of cartoons from being made and replaced it with things like Captain Planet. About the show. Swat Kats is set in a universe where anthropomorphic felines inhabit the Earth. The series is focused on the two main characters, Chance T-Bone Furlong and Jake Bresner, who were ex-Megacat Elite law enforcement agents. They were relegated to a military salvage operation after an incident involving their commanding officer, Commander Farrell, which led to the destruction of the newly built Enforcer headquarters. The two decide to become vigilantes, utilizing what they find in the scrapyard and coming up with their own high-tech jet. They've dedicated themselves to saving Megacat City as well as Deputy Mayor Calico Callie Briggs from the evils of Dark Cat. Spelled with a K because poor literacy is a thing that was cool in the 90s. Cool is also spelled with a K. Production. The show was created by Christian and Yvonne Temberley. In an interview with Christian, he stated that they were pitching the idea of Swat Kats to various studios, trying to get it picked up. The last studio they went to before Hanna-Barbera was Saban. Green Power Rangers, of course. He was very excited to get the show created, and Saban wasn't working fast enough in order to get the show made, so he cut ties with Saban and went to Hanna-Barbera. However, Hanna-Barbera at the time wasn't able to finance their cartoon show, as the company was falling on harder times. This was quickly rectified as Ted Turner had bought Hanna-Barbera, and so in an amazing stroke of luck, they were in the market to create two new cartoon shows. One show was going to be a comedy, and the other one was going to be an action-packed series. Christian stated that the other companies came in with actors and actresses to do line readings, but the only thing he had was cutout boards, a poster, and a boombox with the music. It was enough because Hanna-Barbera decided to give them the funding to do their show, and that was the action show they were going to be producing. The comedy show they decided to go with, as far as I can tell, was Two Stupid Dogs. But I wouldn't quote me on that one. They were given the office of Jane Barbera, Joe Barbera's daughter. Christian was flabbergasted that they were creating their cartoon in the same studio that had produced the Flintstones, the Jetsons, and Scooby-Doo. It was a really big moment for him. The thing that was really good about working with Hanna-Barbera was that they were given the ability to make the show how they wanted it to be, instead of being given a lot of studio mandates. Fred Siebert told the two that if the show was successful, it was because of them, and if the show failed, it was because of them. Voice cast and characters. For the two main heroes, you had Chance Furlong, known as T-Bone, voiced by Charlie Adler. Chance is the pilot of the two, and he's very protective of both his partner and the Turbo Cat. He's more likely to take more chances and refusing to eject from the Turbo Cat on more than one occasion, instead opting to try to coax his baby out of the trouble that they're in. You also have Jake Clausen, also known as Razor, voiced by Barry Gordon. Jake might be confused with only being the brains of the operation. However, he's also the brawn and capable of handling himself in a fight. He created the Turbo Cat as well as all the other gadgets that they use to fight evil. And of the two, he's more restrained and level-headed. As for the supporting characters, you have Mayor Manx, voiced by Jim Cummings. As his name would suggest, he is the mayor of Mega Cat City, and much like certain politicians we know nowadays, he's seen working on his golf game more than working in the office on paperwork. The one who's actually in charge of Mega Cat City is Calico Callie Briggs, voiced by Tress MacNeille. Ironically, she's not colored like a calico. Callie is a friend and ally to the Swat Kats. She is the biggest supporter of them and has a direct way to contact them whenever the city needs to be saved. Rounding out the supporting cast is the Enforcers. You have Commander Ulysses Farrell, voiced by Gary Owens. He's single-handedly responsible for creating the Swat Kats, as I've stated earlier. And much like the incident that incited him to kick the duo out of the Enforcers, he's always trying to get the upper hand on the situation and get the last punch. However, he has worked with the Swat Kats, who he himself has stated are nothing more than vigilante scum, if the situation is dire enough. And the last enforcer of note is Lieutenant Felina Farrell, voiced by Lori Allen, who happens to be Commander Ulysses Farrell's niece. Unlike her uncle, she's more likely to work with the Swat Kats and accept their help when they come to her aid. She's very good at her job, and the only reason why she hasn't been kicked off the force for working with the Swat Kats is because Commander Farrell is afraid his brother would stop talking to him altogether. Much like Chance, she does like to take a lot of chances and is somewhat reckless. As for the villains of the show, the only one I'm going to be talking about here is Dark Cat, voiced by Brock Peters. He's the main villain of the show and is the reason why Jake and Chance became the Swat Kats in the first place. His plans were simple. All he wanted to do was destroy Mega Cat City and create a new lawless town called Dark Cat City. And much like most villains, he was the reason why the Swat Kats were created and therefore created his own worst enemy. Broadcast history. The show had 2 seasons. Season 1 started September 11, 1993 and lasted until December 4th, with 13 episodes. Season 2 began September 10, 1994 and lasted until December 24th, and added another 12 episodes. There were at least 3 episodes that were unfinished, and 4 episodes that were never produced, thanks in part to the cancellation of the show. The reason for the show's cancellation is at the time, video games were being targeted for the violence depicted in them aimed at children. Ted Turner himself went to Congress and was talking about the violence in cartoons that also targeted children. As a result, most violent cartoons at the time were canceled, and this included Swat Kats. However, it wasn't the sole factor, as Swat Kats had seen a decline in viewership. Also, there wasn't a toy line in place fast enough to keep the show funded, so a combination of all 3 factors led to the cancellation of the show. Another thing of note, Hanna-Barbera was busy working on Cartoon Network's anthology series, What a Cartoon, which could have also contributed to the cancellation. But all is not lost. On July 23rd, 2015, Christian and Yvonne created a Kickstarter campaign in an attempt to try to revive the Swat Kats cartoon and produce a new series. Just one day after the campaign, the Kickstarter successfully reached its goal of $50,000 needed for the production and concept of promotional material, which would help them to find an investor who would be interested in reviving the series. The campaign ended August 22, 2015 with $141,500, which would help them to create a 2-minute long trailer of how the series would look. I must admit, when the show was on in 1993, it was something I wasn't interested in watching, not because I thought the show was bad, but because at the time I was watching the Disney Channel and the Disney Afternoon. I'm fairly confident that if I had watched the show as a kid, I would have loved it. As for watching the show, the only place I can find it is on Amazon on DVD. They have the entire series available to watch for under $30. I would highly recommend watching the show, as I do believe this show single-handedly may have started the furry community to spring up. Although, I wouldn't quote me on that either. As always, I'm your host, the Animator, and this was another episode of Cartoon Breakdown. You know, it's really good that the main villains of the show were all cats. Can you imagine what would have happened if they had a villain made from a vacuum? It'd be like, oh no, it's Dark Vacuum and his minions, the Red Dots. The SWAT Kats would never win.